This exhibition came about through a conversation that we had with Annelle about how illustrators might be able to start thinking kind of outside of the box or off of the page, how they would be able to translate their work into durable materials, as we talked a little bit about in the tour. And we're going to hear from three wonderful artists who I know and have worked with personally and love, and I'm so happy that they're here to share their stories with us today. And I just want to give you little bios about each of them, and then we'll hear from Susan to start. Susan Farrington is a fine artist, illustrator, and children's book author who has been making art as long as she can remember. She's an avid flea market white elephant table shopper, and along with fabric, paint, and ink, many of her vintage discoveries find their way into her playful, whimsical, multi-layered collages. Susan has created art for hundreds of magazines and newspapers, including Target, Hallmark, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, UNICEF, and many more. She was commissioned by the MTA Arts Design in 2013 to create that wonderful car card that you saw downstairs, and I can't wait for her to tell us more about that in just a minute. George Bates is an illustrator who works in a range of media and industries, including advertising, animation, children's markets, editorial, product design, and the record industry. His illustration and commercial art studio in New York, George Bates Studio, has collaborated with a diverse array of clients since 1990, including Virgil Mobile, MTV, Nickelodeon, the New York Times, the LA Times, and many other major clients. George has 2 permanent public projects, and he's going to talk with us about those today. And when he's not working, he's probably surfing or thinking about surfing and how it's a useful metaphor for everything else. And last, Beatrice Coron is going to talk with us. She explores visual storytelling in artist books, paper cutting, public art, and wearable sculptures. She also collaborates on animated movies and apps. Her cut designs are made of paper, glass, or metal, from small to monumental. Her work can be seen in major collections such as the Metropolitan Museum, the Getty, the Walker, and public art is installed in transit systems, including New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. If you want to learn more about Beatrice after she speaks with us today, you can check out a really wonderful TED Talk that she did that I love, and I know that you'll love it too. So we're going to hear from each of the artists, and then we're going to have some time for conversation and then questions from all of you. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Is this okay? Great. I'm Susan Farrington, and I'd like to thank Amy and also the Society of Illustrators for inviting me to be part of this panel. Some of you may recognize my piece, Robots, which you just saw downstairs, but also was on many trains last year for the full year. And I thought what I would do today is talk a little bit about my history, how I have kind of made my way to this point, just briefly, and then talk about my process and the idea of making public art and what has happened since I've made this piece that has just been so fabulous. So I'll start with this great photograph of my mom and dad. My mom is actually here today with me, and best, most supportive people that you could imagine, always encouraging, and especially in the field of art. As a kid, I was always buying and making different art projects, and in the upper left, the creepy crawlers were my favorite, probably because they were 3D, and the fact that I had some burns on my fingers really didn't matter one little bit. So fast forward, I went to Mass College of Art. I studied fibers and ceramics and all sorts of media, and got a studio in Brookline Village, started making work and selling it for 25 bucks a pop, so I was really on my way. At that point, a good friend of mine said, you know, some of this would translate well to illustration work, and you should think about going to the Globe and the Boston Globe and some other places, which I did, and that led to a 20-year career doing editorial work. So I did a lot of book covers. This is one for Harvard University Press, and a lot of magazine editorial work, and a lot of newspaper editorial work. And throughout this time, I was also keeping sketchbooks, personal work that was just fun for me to do, had no outside art direction, just my own ideas and doodles and cut paper and gluing. And this is 4 different sketchbook spreads. And I have this slide in here because I want you to take a look at the lower left-hand side from where you are. And this is one of those times when one of my sketchbook pages led me to start creating a piece that would be more of a finished piece that would then be purchased for illustration, editorial work, or in this case, licensing. So here's part of my studio table with, I don't know, 35 mushrooms. And that, again, translated to this mushroom botanical piece, which was recently picked up by a licensing company for wall art and ceramics and furniture and stuff like that. This piece was a personal piece that I did based on my love of anatomical drawings, and this was picked up last year by Urban Outfitters. So the gist of this is to say that keeping sketchbooks and really working constantly on personal work has paved the way for me to work with Amy and to just also to enjoy my work, because it's what I want to do. This again was a personal piece which was picked up for licensing. This piece was based on a sketchbook that I saw at the Museum of Fine Arts, which then was translated to a magazine jacket for a children's magazine. And at the same time, I was working on creating a web presence, so I did a website, and that helped me to really focus. I was talking with George earlier that embracing the computer and social media is hugely important for illustrators or artists, and creating this website was a big step for me. First of all, I figured out that I could actually do it, which was great, and the other thing I did was I created a presence on Etsy, which I don't know if you know about it, but it's an online marketplace for artists. And for me, this has been like an online portfolio. People contact me a lot through this site. This piece was personal. Again, just started out with all of my collection of vintage papers and metallic materials. I thought, oh, I could probably make some really fun robots. This personal work translated to another cover jacket for Cricket magazine, which is a children's magazine. And I think Amy may have seen some of this work, which led to a call from her. And I'll tell you, it was such a thrilling call. I think you left a message on my machine which said, I don't know if you'd be interested, but we're wondering if you would do an art card for us. And I called back within seconds after I heard it and said, oh yes, I would be very interested in that. The other wonderful thing about Amy and this program, she liked my robots, and she wanted me to incorporate some aspect of the New York subway system. She was not specific about it. It could be a train, could be a station, could be anything. And that was the art direction I got, and then I was free to kind of play. I'm going to show you a little bit about the process. The top third of this is the full rough. I have 3 of these to show you. And the bottom part shows you a detail of the rough. So this was the first one, which was robots and anthropomorphic creatures inside a train. The second one was based more on the idea of Central Park Zoo, and again, creatures that are anthropomorphized, but mostly animals. And the third was this robots which were riding on top of the train and inside the train. Amy informed me that there is such a thing as subway surfing, which people do. I didn't realize that, being from Boston. We're kind of quiet there. So we discussed reworking that, and instead of having them subway surfing, the creatures were riding on the train below ground and walking above ground. So this was the reworked rough. Now, the next thing that I do when I work is I start to gather materials in my studio, and I have an enormous collection of vintage papers. I love, as Amy in her introduction said, I love flea markets and estate sales, and I'm often looking for fabrics, ribbon, paper, little metallic pieces. So here's a part of my studio. You can see it's just pre-hoarder. It's not quite TV worthy, but it's almost. And so here are some of my trays full of papers. And so this is the gathering phase, thinking about what my colors are going to be, how much color I want to use. Do I want to use a lot of neutrals? Because I do actually in my work use a fair amount of neutrals, but for this piece I really wanted it to be colorful, and I wanted it to be happy and joyful. I wanted to make people smile when they saw it. So the color palette I wanted it to be bright. And what I do, and I spoke earlier about this to one of the people in the audience, is I lay out the rough, and then I start cutting and just placing. As you can see over there on the left, I'm just starting to think about what the different patterns will look like and how they'll work together. And this kind of prismatic theme started to rear its head. And so I spent probably a couple of weeks working and reworking the colors and the shapes. Some of the different creatures I had to reject because they didn't translate well, but most of them I kept. And Amy was kind enough to give me some papers and objects from the MTA paper collection. So the conductor is part of an MTA card. And this is, you can see it's starting to come together. Then at this point, I start doing the background and the gluing. And once it's laid out like this, it's pretty close to being done. So I can complete the background, complete the gluing, and then start adding the little elements like the eyes and things like the beads around the mouth on this pink creature, and the buttons that are the wheels of the train. And then the finishing of the gluing and scanning it in, tweaking any colors, and sending it off. So at this point, I just want to say that when I've done illustration work, it's rare that I get any kind of feedback from people. You send it out there, and George and I spoke a little bit about this earlier. You don't hear from people. But with this job, I got 2 or 3 comments from people per week. Most of them were just, love your piece. This piece makes me smile. This piece makes me happy. And I think that is, in the public art discussion, that's what it's about. You know, you're actually making a connection. You're making a human connection, and you're creating an awareness in a space that, let's face it, can be very kind of deadening. So it was a thrill to get all this kind of feedback. Here it is in action, and here's just a couple of comments that I love. This top one is by a woman who said, thank you. I spend 2 hours a day with my face pressed up against somebody's backpack, and I've made basically character backstories for each of these creatures. And she was asking me about one of the creatures in the far right and what my story was, and she wanted to share what her story was for this creature. So again, it was just, that was a thrill for me. I miss that. The other awesome thing that happened from this project was that I won the silver medal from the Society of Illustrators this year for advertising. And I was so grateful, and thank you very much. And the piece was accepted into American Illustration for last year, which was another thrill. And the last thing for my talk is that happened was that a couple of children's book publishers contacted me and said, we love your work and we think it would make a great children's book. What do you have in mind? Do you want to do an alphabet book, or do you want to come up with something? And I had always had in the back of my noggin a few ideas. And so over the summer I wrote a children's book, and I presented it, and it's going to be published in 2016 through Balzer and Bray, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, and it's almost done. So this experience has been just a thrilling experience. You mentioned Holy Grail before, and I feel like this is the Holy Grail for an illustrator, to get this kind of exposure and recognition, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you.
So I've got 15 minutes and I'm going to gloss over a lot of stuff. So hopefully you guys will have some questions. Be like, why isn't he talking about this? So I've been an illustrator for 25 years now, and I never had really considered public art. I mean, I was a commercial artist, but the thing is that like most artists, commercial artists, you know, you have these other interests, and for me, I blame my sketchbooks for single-handedly pushing me outside of illustration into a wide variety of other mediums. And the thing is that, you know, they're a place to sort of find, for me, more immediate modes of expression. That's like the real goal of them. And to just kind of like find this area between illustration and fine art. It's a sort of strange area. I mean, I have friends who are fine artists and they're just like, we just do fine art, we'd never consider illustration. But so many of the illustrators I know, you're in this very commercial sort of parameter, but there's also this gray area in between, and I think that some really interesting things come of that. And the way that I got my first approach for public art was that I'm a surfer. I surf out Rockaway. I've been surfing since I was a kid. And a lot of the surf art that I do is in the sketchbooks. And this website out of England was like, oh, we've seen some of your surf art in your sketchbooks. Would you put it on our site? So I have my surf art on this website in England. And one of the directors had typed in Brooklyn surfer artist into Google, and my name came up. And they contacted me. They said, we have a couple of stations in Rockaway, Queens coming up. You should really consider applying to these for public art. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of crazy. I love Rockaway and I love art. So let's see if these two things can come together. So I was one of the finalists for the commission. And this is the piece that I did. These were going to be these faceted glass windows, maybe like 12 feet by 8 feet high, or maybe like 6 feet. I'm really bad with measurements. So what happened is that I didn't get the commission. And I was told that on the committee was exactly split between my piece and another artist's piece. And what they did is they asked the public to decide. So the public decided on this other artist's commission. And I was on the phone with the director and I said, well, what was the image that won? And he said it was an image of towels flowing in the breeze. And in that moment, I realized why my piece had failed. I realized that like my piece was more of a tone poem, and it was more of like a piece about my affections for this place, but it wasn't really public art enough. And I was like, oh, it needs to be public art. It's like I got this far, and I wasn't even thinking about public art. And what that means, though, is entirely broad. And this is why I think illustrators are really good at public art, is because you understand that there is some sort of brief. And in that moment, I understood it has to be public art. That's the brief, but it's so incredibly broad. So I was told by the director that you should keep applying because this is really about a right place, right time thing. And illustrators, we're used to rejection, so just keep applying. So a couple years later, they were doing a couple other stations out in Rockaway, and they said to me, you know, you're one of the finalists, so just go to it. So this image that you see here, this is one of my small travel sketchbooks, and I actually started this image because I was stuck on a subway train that wasn't moving for a really long time. So I started drawing it, and I was like, oh shit, this is going to take me forever to finish. But I was thinking, I was like, you know what, I'm going to use this for something someday. So when the second commission came up, I thought to myself, I was like, this might be a really good solution for the public art problem out there, because it's a really incredibly diverse community that's also a beach community. So this was my final submittal for it. And it was one of these things where the first one that I was up for, I literally spent months. I think I spent 4 months just like laboring on, like, is this right? I think I did 2 proposals too. I just wanted to get it right, and it failed. And this one, I think I sat down for maybe like a half hour. And I had taken a lot of these images from my sketchbooks and from other jobs and things like this, and just kind of put it together. And like the overall motif, I mean, just very simple. It's just like, this is a place where all these disparate and divergent sort of cultures come together in this really strange and beautiful, like one side of the tracks, it's just this little town, and the other side, which is like a city town, and the other side of the tracks, it's like dunes and beach. It's a very strange kind of and wonderful place. So I was told that I got the commission, I got the phone call, and I was like, wow, this is literally like being struck by lightning. But he said the next step is you have to go out to Germany because that's where they're going to paint it and fabricate it. So I went to Germany. And the slide on the left was what I was shown when I got there. They're like, this is what we did for, you know, the drawings and everything that you sent. And they're like, what do you think of it? And I just was like, listen, it's really beautiful. It's really tasteful. That's the problem. I was like, it's too tasteful. I was like, this is a community that's incredibly diverse and vibrant, and the colors really need to pop. So I whipped out my laptop and I showed him the RGB file, and he turned to me and he goes, okay. He's like, the guy who's painting this, he doesn't speak English too well. He's like, so I'm going to tell him in the simplest terms possible. He says, it needs to look like candy from a child's box. And I was like, that's it, that's perfect. They're like, come back tomorrow, we'll have the problem solved. So if you look on the right, that's the actual painting on the glass. And then they fired it the next day. Like I said, there's all these chemicals and everything, how they get it to happen. A mysterious process. But so I wasn't expecting that much of a difference. But when I woke up the next morning and went into the studio, this is what I saw. And like on the right, you see these colors. They're just so vibrant and deep. So I brought out the laptop, and what we would do, like you see the number 7 over there. We'd say like, well, is that 7, is that number the one that you want to be the dominant red? I'd be like, that's perfect. They're like, you sure you don't, the others are like, no, they're too tasteful. So that was pretty amazing to see like how quickly, and it was so good that I was there. And I was there for, maybe like a week and a couple days. My wife was like, when are you coming home? I'm like, never, I'm having so much fun. So good. So what happened is like I basically would just kind of like oversee the project. And this is Edward, and this is the guy who single-handedly painted the entire subway station. If you look at the slide on the left, you see the thing that was astounding to me is like they found so much subtle beauty and nuance and aesthetics in my drawing, which is just crap compared to this, is like this is a true artist and a true artisan and craftsman just finding these textures and everything. And they asked me, they're like, do you want to paint the thing? And I'm like, no, I do not want to mess it up, not even a square. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? You're here for so long. And I was like, well, you know, they gave me a bike, and I would like go to little castles and look at art and stuff. And then they told me, they were like, well, you know, we'll give you a studio. So they gave me a studio up in those stairs over there, and they gave me access to their craftsmen. And they're like, we just want artists to come and explore the medium of glass. Like if you go to their website, this is Peter's studio, they literally have a page. It's like, we have apartments for you, come, stay, we'll feed you, we'll love you, we'll give you art. So I was like, how big can I work? And they're like, you can work the size of a door. So for about like 5 days, I just painted and painted, and then they packed up everything and shipped it to me in New York. I've been treated so well on this project. I've never been treated this well as an illustrator. I have more stories, but it's crazy. So this is a shot of the north wall of the Rockaway installation at 36th Street. And I wanted to show this one kind of close up just to give you a sense of like how it changes the space. Like that's the thing about this area, like it's kind of ghetto-y in sections and everything, but just the way that it changes this dark sort of cavernous sort of space. But when I was at Peter's, they said to me, if you create a painting in glass, you haven't created one image, you've created a million, because every time the sun changes, every time a cloud goes by, you have a different painting essentially. So you basically have a million paintings for one, which is really kind of incredible. So this is the south wall and a close-up. And one of the things is like, you see all the blank see-through glass block there. That was actually built in as a budgetary concern. We could either do one, we had the budget for one entire wall, or two separate walls if we built in blank space. But the thing is, like I said, this is like sort of like illustration thinking and problem solving. It's just like, I thought that was actually a better solution to do two walls, because if you can see how, you can see the buildings. This is a pretty cloudy day, but you see how it really kind of interacts with the community out there. But you can hate this piece, you can love this piece, I don't care. What I really care about, and the thing that was really unexpected, was how every time you walk into it, it's a different space because of what happens with the light coming through. And I think that like the beautiful abstracts on the wall, I mean on the wall and on the floors, is for me, for my money, my most favorite thing about the piece. So, like I said, it was like being struck by lightning. I was like, okay, this is never going to happen again. But I was told, like, keep applying to these things. And I would get rejection letters here and there. But then I got an acceptance letter for the Central Avenue subway station in Bushwick. And this is a place where, in the 90s, I was living there. And it was pretty wild because as an illustrator in New York City, I have a home office, I have like all this stuff, I have a studio. I need a lot of space. So I was living out there on Myrtle and Broadway, and friends would come and visit, or just like other folks, and they'd be like, I can't believe you live here. This neighborhood looks so ugly, it looks so dangerous and everything. And I'm like, it's not what you think. I was like, this neighborhood is just full of families. I was like, the restaurants are fantastic. The Cubano sandwiches, if you're a fan, are the best. It's just like, I had so much fun living in this neighborhood. But here's a shot of me that this German photographer came and he took a picture because they were doing this little expose on my art and stuff. And they were just like, this place is just so dangerous looking. And I'm like, yeah, you're framing it that way. But the thing is, like, this is my backyard, and there's the M going by. But the wildest thing, though, was that while I was living there, I was reading Henry Miller's Tropic of Capricorn. And he has a whole paragraph in the book about how Myrtle Avenue is just the worst place on the earth. And just like, and he also says specifically, nothing creative or interesting has ever come from Myrtle Avenue. Myrtle Avenue is a street not of sorrow, for sorrow would be human and recognizable, but of sheer emptiness. And this is like when people come visit me, they're like, we gotta get out of here. I'm like, no, I walk all hours of the day, like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, these people like have invited me into their community, and it's amazing. So I wanted to reflect that in the art. So this is my first pass at it, the 4-panel, I guess, solution. And the thing is that, like, the thing that was really wild is, like, right around the corner from me, there were these old mansions on Bushwick. And I was always wondering, like, well, what are these mansions doing here? And these were because German immigrants came, and then they started the beer baron. The beer baron started the beer industry and everything in Brooklyn. And to see that, and then to see, like, I went to amazing parties with, like, all manner of folks from the neighborhood, just like hip-hop kids, mommies and poppies and stuff, and just like art students. I mean, it was really just an amazing sort of place. So it was an incredibly dynamic neighborhood, and I wanted to reflect that. But I got the phone call that I got this one. It's like, if the first time was being struck by lightning, to have two, I was like, well, maybe there is something to this. I was told that the committee really liked the art, but they had two major changes. One was to tone down the psychedelic nature of the op art, because the fear was that if someone who legitimately has vertigo sees these, and these were supposed to be black and white painted steel, they may get vertigo, fall on the tracks, and die. And you don't want public art to cause death. And the other thing was that they thought, well, these are going to be stainless steel. Why don't we just leave them stainless steel, brushed steel, so they have a more contemporary kind of feel? And I was like, that sounds perfect. So this is the final art that I sent to the fabricator. And if you see, there's also just like more massive areas kind of built into it. And this is the 2-panel proposal. We thought that it might work better in the stations to kind of like spread the art. Because that's the thing, is like, as an illustrator, you're also thinking about time, budget, and all this stuff, and just like what you can do within these parameters. So I'm going to move a little quickly through these, but this is just a case study of two of the panels from the drawing to the final art. And this is up in New Paltz at Casey Fabricators, right before we put them into the station. Now there were some definitely unexpected things that happened we can talk about later, but the thing that I like about this is that they're actually kind of hard to see. If they were painted black, you wouldn't really be able to see them all the time. And much like the pieces in the glass, is that you kind of have a different piece for every light in the day. And that's the thing about this photograph. This is actually of the installed piece. It's just like when it's backlit, you do get that kind of like more op art, psychedelic kind of thing happening, which I really kind of dig. And then this is just to give you a sense of scale of these things and presence. And that's the thing about the difference between like illustration, public art, fine art, and everything, is that like illustration, you kind of have to own the page. Whereas like with fine art, public art, you need to own the wall or the space. And that's the thing about this, is like the idea of scale of presence. So much of the illustration work, we're thinking in terms of this intimacy. But this is, like I said, it goes back to the idea of what it means for the piece to be public. And just another piece or photograph to show a sense of scale and neighborhood. And like I said, and they're kind of hard to see in a context. But one of the things that I think is most humbling and fascinating about the whole public art thing with the MTA is that I was told they consider their collection a group show, which like some of my favorite artists ever, like Al Held, Romare Bearden, just like these are people, these are giants to me of like the creative fields. And to be included in a group show with them is just incredibly humbling. And here you can see my piece in a group show right now in transit with DeMarco's chin, which I think is really kind of fascinating. But I'll end with this. This is my favorite photograph of the series. Yes, it's blurry. It's kind of hard to see. But the idea of art in transit, I think that the only thing that's really of value about illustration, art, aesthetics, is what it makes a person think or feel. And I had a friend who was dating a brain surgeon, and she was like, oh man, she's like, we don't do anything of value. He's like out there like saving lives and everything. And I was like, you know, I really disagree. I think life is hard. And if you can provide an aesthetic experience to anyone at any point in their day, I think that's of a real lasting and deep value. And that's the thing about this stuff. I think that I was told they build for 200 years, which, yeah, that'd be great. But the idea that just for a moment, if you can take anyone and provide that aesthetic experience, that's where the real sort of value is in this stuff. So I hope you have lots of questions, and thank you.
Okay, so thank you for everybody who made it possible for me to be here today. And I'm doing cut stories. So in fact, I'm using Tyvek. So it's like the envelope of the post office. It's very resistant. And I have a special order of Tyvek that's black on one side and white on the other side. And so when I start, I do a very loose drawing because in paper cutting, the line is your structure because I don't want to glue my piece, so it needs to hold by itself. So it's like drawing with the mind of a sculptor because you take out the pieces. And then when I have my loose things, I put like 4 different layers of Tyvek under. I cut through everything, so it's like a writing. And then at the end, I separate the pieces and I kind of touch up and make the detail on each one. So it's kind of, I call them editions. But in fact, they are kind of sometimes multiple original. And it's like doing a writing system. So that was on different days, because you can see I'm changing my clothes too. That was at the Museum of Art and Design. And then I do cut everything. So for fine art, for artist books, in fact, I find of everything as artist books. But I do also collaboration with developers. So I have an app to relax with a mermaid playing jazz. And it's for iPad. You can download it for free on iTunes. I did collaboration with a film, Geneva Film, to make a 3D movie. So in fact, the background is 3D and my paper cut is in front. You can have it on YouTube, 6-minute movie. And I do public art, so it comes in all kind of shape and material. And I do also fences and window screen. So I have different buildings I did with a developer in the South Bronx. And right now I'm doing a big project also in Brownsville in Brooklyn. So it's always interesting to introduce stories everywhere. But I like the story to be wearable. So on my wearable stories, here is a theater of the mind, because it's always starts in your head anyway. So but this time it's a theater from one to one. So it's a very private experience, that's a public experience, and it's also folded into an artist book. And I also have artist book I can wear. So on the left, it's called Quote Couture, because it's all quotes about appearance, because it's always about how you're seen and how you see things, and fashion statement. So I like to really blur the different notion of art. And I spoke at how I came to public art and to art in general, because I'm self-taught. And I spoke about that at TED. I wore my, my cape, my magic cape of Kurt Tyvek. And I began to be a full-time artist when I was around 40 years old. So before that, I was a shepherdess, a truck driver, a cleaning lady. I worked in factories, and so on. And all that come back into my art now. So for the MTA, I was lucky enough to have an art card. And when I do a commission, I do a very, very tight drawing. Because paper cutting, as you might understand, is not reversible. And starting over is not an option I want either. So when there is something as a commission, I want to be sure the people see exactly what I want to do before I cut. And there were a very minor change on this all around town. So my concept for all around town was really to have as many windows as possible for people can just take their imagination and keep on with the story. And they could go wherever they wanted, even if the train was going nowhere. And so I put all kinds of different things that could or not happen in New York. And this project was great, because as it was said before, it's great exposure, and you have a lot of people contacting you, sending you emails. You have people making proposal, got married, like with this poster. And I had also emails from a guy who said, oh, I'm commuting the same time, same place for the last 20 years. The first time I missed my stop. And I was like, yeah. So, and one day I was in the subway and there were those women coming and say, oh, that's my favorite piece of art and all that. And I was like, I made it. And when I told my husband, he said, and they believed you? And I was like, yeah. And one of the very rewarding things also was beside the mug and the shopping bag, there were a jigsaw puzzle made of it. So it was 1,000 pieces. And as you can guess, as a paper cutter, I'm already a little obsessive compulsive. So jigsaw puzzles are right on my alley. I love them. So of course I do first the straight lines, and then after I do where there is the colors, and then after I'm left with everything at best is black and white or completely black tiles. And I'm like, oh, that's tough. And then I realized, like my drawing at that scale, the shape of my character, the head of the character, are exactly the same shape than the jigsaw puzzle. And it was until the last one, I was like, they forgot to put all the pieces in that box. But I made it. And then after, I made I mean, in fact, that won the first public art commission I got. And as you can notice, I'm doing black and white work. So it was another challenge to do faceted glass. So it's in Burke Avenue in the Bronx. And the concept for that was to travel on time. And sometimes it's not possible, so you can travel in time with a book on the subway. And so I research all the writers who are doing related to the Bronx. And in fact, I found like more than 40 writers who are related to the Bronx. So I tried to narrow down because I wanted 2 for one side of the platform, 2 for the other platform. So I went with very different writers, different timelines. So I went with Edgar Allan Poe, who lived in the Bronx and wrote the Ulalume poem there. Then I took Sholem Aleichem, Motel the Cantor's son, who, when he immigrated, lived in the Bronx. Then James Baldwin with The Fire Next Time, because he was going at school in the South Bronx. And then after Nicholas Amor, who wrote El Bronx Remembered, when the Jewish neighborhood began to have like Puerto Rican arriving and the change of the place. So each window has little vignettes that are in the books. And in each window, you have the name of the book, and I made sure that the branch library have those 4 books, so people can go and read the book. So faceted glass, the glass is an amazing material. So here you can see the same window of James Baldwin with different lighting. So not the same color at all. It's even stronger here with Sholem Aleichem. You can see when it's backlit or frontlit. So faceted glass can be completely opaque or completely like liquid. And in between, holding the glass, it's epoxy. And the epoxy can be completely black or completely gray, depend of the lighting. So it's very, very interesting to compose with that. And I decided to have my paper cutting would be the epoxy line. And I would use the glass as coloring. So of course, they call it glass cake. And they come in certain dimension, about like US letter. And they have to cut them by hand with a hammer. So they cannot go very, very small or weird direction. And the original they will work with, it's what they call a cartoon. It's a life-size drawing. So I did my life-size drawing as a paper cut. And then I put another Tyvek on the background where I put basically the direction of colors I want. Because remember, I'm working in black and white. So that was a big challenge because I arrived in Minnesota in the factory in Winona. And then you have all the different kind of blues, and they show you a glass cake in artificial color. The same one, they bring it to the window, it's another blue, then a cloud comes by and it's another blue. But luckily, Don, who was working at the factory there, was a master colorist and helped me on my choice because I was giving him the idea of what I wanted, also very strong color, and he knew the value of the colors to put together. And here you see how it's done. So that one is not my cartoon. It was another artist's cartoon when I visited. But they put the drawing, and then they, with a wheel, they roll on it to mark where they have to cut the piece of glass. And then they cut the glass with a hammer. Then they put it face down on this bed of sand. And then after they pour the epoxy. And they let set, and then you have the window. And on my windows, I had some little windows inside where it would have been too complicated to really cut the glass around. So in fact, they drew directly with the epoxy on the piece of glass. So there is limitation, but there is always kind of tricks on all the techniques. So here you see Nicholas Amor, El Bronx Remembered. In fact, on the exhibition here on your right, is the proposal I did. So the drawing is not, what I submitted at the end was not exactly like the proposal. I changed the character from, but it's around there. And then the dancers, you know, I work also like visual storytelling. So in fact, she's wearing a heart on her sleeve. because I always love to have things with words. So I have a lot of things like that into my things. And you see the little labels because it's the number of the colors. So I got back all the cartoons with all the numbers. And here you can see the physicality of the glass. It really has bubble, has life, and it's really wonderful. And the last project I did is On the Right Track. So On the Right Track is in Oxford Street, 104th Street on Ozone Park in Queens. It's one stop before the end of the line on Lefferts Avenue on the A train. And so my concept for that one was like a giant deck of cards. So every window screen is a card. And it gives you a mood you can endorse. So in fact, it's like a game, because if you arrive at that station, then you will be matched with a window, and that's what you have to be. Or if you wait for your train, then you can go next to a card where you want to be like that for the day. So it was like a game, and each card has a character and a word. It's always positive attitudes, and then little, like here is the shamrock, but a little like symbol of that mood. So I put that equilibrist with a fish on his head, and it looks like, oh, where did you get your ideas? But I really saw that guy, and it was in Paris. And I saw this performer. So I just added the wheel, but he really had a live fish and a fishbowl on his head while juggling. You don't need imagination, just need to look around. And so the material for that is stainless steel. So it's half-inch stainless steel. And the sirloin of each character is hand soldering. So we came with this solution with the fabricator because I wanted to have a little more handmade touch. I wanted to have this kind of thing that's not completely even, not like the laser or the water jet. And it has a little burn, so it gave a little the idea of the tarot card, you know, like a kind of game thing. So it shines, and it has really a nice look. I was really happy with that fabrication. So my original for that, because I don't want anybody to translate the work from one medium to another. So the original is a computer file, because that's what is going to be fed to the machine. So I work in Illustrator, and I work with the Bezier curve to make my vectors. And then I export them in DXF or DWG, for they are understood by the CAD program. And here it was a water jet machine. It's the same process if it's a laser cut. So the water jet, it's like a big printer. But instead of being ink, it's like high pressure water with some sand. So it has the grit, and it can go through the half-inch stainless steel. And you see it's very messy, because it's really project a lot. And then after, you really have to spend a lot of time to clean it. And the edges also are very, very sharp. So you have those guys with power machine that are tooling the edge to really get it smooth. And also when you do those window screen, there is also, I call it like games, because you have parameters. And sometimes I work also making balconies or window garage opening or things like that. So sometimes you cannot have a hole more than 2 inch or more than 4 inch big or this or that, or you can have a point like that. So it's like I call them games. You know, you just put your little 2x2 or 4x4 on your Illustrator file, and you just put it on every hole to see if it goes through or if it stays. And so it's that easy. But like for those guys to really work with the machine, that takes long, especially then after they had to hand soldered. And that was a really, really long time to hand soldered. And in fact, the guys who installed on the station, like all of them said, wow, I'm glad I was not the one doing that. Because you really need a steady hand too. So every time there is public art, what's interesting, it's like, for me, it's all storytelling. And the storytelling, you give element for the public to tell the story. So it's a perfect interface. because it's an interface where the artists do a part, but that's a community sharing, because people, they bring already what they know and they bring their mood. So it's really a constructive thing where there is a lot of things to experiment. So I'm keeping experimenting. Thank you very much.
So my first question is one of the most important questions that I like to ask artists, and that is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh yeah, artist.
Artist.
I mean, well, the thing is that, like, you got to understand, like, my dad was an art teacher, and he was a commercial artist in the 50s. So, like, we had so much art of his own in the house, and you know, he would come home. He would actually do these summer programs in Newark, and he would be like, "Come on up, you know, you can be in my classes." So it was just really kind of fun. We were just exposed to so much art and creativity. Yeah, I'd say, if anything, I suffer from an overwhelming amount of influence, and that's the way that I can relate to my students, because I think they have an overwhelming amount of influence these days with the internet. But that's the earliest kind of memories.
Susan, what about you?
Well, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I don't really remember, but I think that, like with my work, it's collage is my thing, and I think I wanted to be a lot of different things growing up. I remember setting up a chalkboard in the basement of our house and being a teacher and wanting to do that, and teaching my two sisters who were my victims. Had to go through that, my teaching skills. I remember just loving doing art projects, so probably there was always in the back of my mind the idea of being an artist. I think I wanted to be a fashion designer. I probably wanted to do, there were so many things that I wanted to do, but I'm glad that I was lucky enough to find the path to this career, because it fits me.
What about you, Beatrice?
Well, I don't have much memory either. And I don't remember what I wanted to be. Oh, yeah, I don't have a microphone. This one's okay. And I mean, I didn't like childhood that much anyway. So I know what I didn't want. I didn't want anything I had. I wanted to just try different things. And then it took me a long, long time before I really became an artist. But probably I just wanted to be free.
Tell us a little bit about what you did in your past. You had quite a storied kind of career before you became an artist. What were some of the things that you did?
It was not really a career, but it was small jobs. So I've been a shepherdess. I've been picking also strawberries or potatoes or things like that. I mean, I was a worker in factories, cleaning lady, and I lived in China, in Egypt. I was a truck driver. I worked in tourism. I was a New York City tour guide. Then after I took Chinese people here and French people in China and American in China. And so I went all around by traveling.
How do you find that experience has impacted the work that you're creating here and that you've been doing elsewhere?
Everything, because I'm very porous, so I catch up on everything I see, everything I read, and everything gets back into my work anyway. There is enough windows for it.
There are lots of windows, lots and lots of. I was thinking that all of the windows kind of represent many of the lives that you've lived. What about you guys? What other things have you done besides? Did you get right into becoming an illustrator right away? Is that something that you were focused on? Have you been doing other things that have helped inform your work?
Well, the truth is, I moved to New York. I wanted to go to art school in New York so I could join a band, quit art, and tour the world. And well, the band is actually, I just got to notice, they're like, we're going to get together in September. And I told my wife, I was like, I got to find a way to get out of that. I was like, it's just such a time suck. I mean, I literally had to make a decision between like the music thing or the art thing. And it was funny because it was like trying to break up with 4 girls. They were like, you got to do the music thing. And I'm like, no, the illustration thing is really taking off. They're like, no, it's never going to work. Art's not going to work. And it actually did. It actually really did. Because I think that art schools have produced produced more great bands than great artists in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's just like as an artist, like there's a certain sensitivity that's required, and it's just like for me, like moving to New York City. I mean, I've been here since '86, and it's just like I love being here because there's like so much information, so much stimulation. It's just like you gotta really compartmentalize. Like, well, what am I gonna take advantage of? And that's the thing. It's like I'm actually thinking about moving out of the city now, but it's just like I think like most New Yorkers, like I'm gonna move out, and like I'll be here for the next 40 years at least. So yeah.
I think Lou Reed said something like the scariest thing is to actually move out of New York.
I think so.
That's even more scary than living in New York. It's true. Susan, you live in Boston. Talk to us about how that kind of community has helped support your work.
Well, I have lived in Boston pretty much my whole life, although after college I got a job with a travel company and did a lot of traveling in Europe and South America as a guide, and that definitely informed my sense of color and looking at different cultures, and that was very exciting. I also have two children, and that's been a big part of my life. And balancing making art with having a family has, it has its rewards and also its challenges. Living in Boston, it's definitely a quieter scene than New York, and I have loved coming here to do this kind of thing, and also to come to the awards ceremony last January. So I don't think that I take as much advantage of Boston as I could, but that's partly because I'm just busy with other things. But I do, enjoy going to the Museum of Fine Arts and the Peabody Essex Museum up in Salem, especially around Halloween. So that's sort of sums it up.
So we're thinking about New York, and your work all has kind of been inspired by the places where you travel by subway. What was the experience that you had the first time you saw your work installed in the stations, George?
Well, like I said, it was so much better than what I did that there was this real disconnect. Like, it didn't feel like I did it because the scale was so different. Like and that's what's really kind of fun. Like, I think that like any illustration piece you do, you get it in the mail or whatever, and you see it, and friends like, oh, I saw that thing, it was great. I was like, it wasn't so great, because like, you critique it or whatever because you're so close to it. But because there was this process of disconnect and others involved, like I can go to the Rockaway station and actually enjoy it. Like, it's really kind of a strange and beautiful thing. And same thing with the Central Art one. I mean, the Central Ave one, is that to see it in this other medium entirely, like the texture of it, like I don't have ownership of it, which is really kind of fun.
Beatrice, what do you think about that? I mean, you've done 2 different projects with different fabricators translating your work. What's your experience with that?
I'm speechless because you're so much in the work, and I mean, for me, I really like from the concept of it to really make it in Photoshop, and sometimes to make mock-up that I blow up life-size to see how it is the relation of the body to the image, and how it works from far away to go. I mean, I'm like, if I was going to the station, what do I want to see, or will I notice the book? So it's, I mean, I cannot enjoy it like if it was somebody else's work, because I will always be in that work, like saying, oh, why did I put that things here, or why I didn't put it there, or something, or then, oh, the color here, it's interesting, I have to remember that for the next one. And so it's always like taking notes and going for the next step.
Susan, what about you when you first saw your poster? Did you see it in the subway?
I did, finally. I had to really hunt for it. I'm not that familiar with the subway system here, and so the first time I was here, I spent quite a lot of time looking for it and never found it. And then the next time that I was here, I was able to track it down. And it was thrilling, of course, to see it on the train, but also to kind of imagine the community that was seeing the piece, and feel like I was part of that, and just observing the people around it and seeing some people looking at it. And of course, I think I was with my sister and one of my daughters, and we were, making a fuss and taking pictures, and so that also created a kind of hubbub and community feeling. But it was thrilling, just thrilling to see it in action.
I have the luxury of kind of knowing all this work before it's actually born, and so when I get on the subway and I see an art card or I see one of these projects, I feel it's always thrilling to me, and it's exciting, and I hope that it continues to be that for people when they see it. One question I'm interested in, and we've been doing interviews all week long, but what is the best piece of advice that you have been given as an artist or as a person that you might kind of give to a younger artist or illustrator who's starting out?
I can start.
Go ahead, please.
One of the best things that I've heard, and I truly believe this is not to compare yourself to other artists, that embrace what your vision is and what you enjoy doing, and run with that, and don't look at other people and say, oh gosh, I wish I had what that person has, or I wish I was doing something else. Just enjoy that you have the talent to create, and don't compare yourself to other people.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not compare yourself, and also keeping on. Keeping on whatever. It's like creativity, it's like breathing. You take in whatever you see and you bring out, and you just have to work this flux constantly, like breathing, and it's what you do.
Yeah, I'd say that it was interesting to see the sketchbook stuff. I mean, I think that no one is going to ask you to do the thing that you really want to do. This is something that I heard at a lecture, and it's just like, this is the truth. It's just like, no one is going to say, hey, you're really into heavy metal. Start drawing me these heavy metal posters. Like, we really want you to do that. It's like, nobody is going to do that. Nobody's going to really just look into your soul and be like, tell me, what do you want to do? I'm going to pay you money for it. And that's the thing, is as an illustrator, I mean, you're told to do the thing that you did for someone else, only make it special for them. There's a truth to that, and it exists for a very practical reason. But you have to get work out there outside of that, and just put it out in any way possible. Do the thing that you really want to do. Be your own client in a way, and eventually somebody's going to see it and be like, wow. And that's how I got these gigs. I mean, it was on this site in England, a surfing site. It's crazy. And somebody typed in Brooklyn surfer artist. And if I was just like, no, I got to do the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, it never would have happened. It never would have opened these doors. So that's the thing. It's just like, be your own client and do the thing that you really want to do. Because everyone is going to tell you no until one person says yes. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah. We were on board for you the whole while. Yeah, we were just waiting. And it's like, ooh, yeah.
That's wonderful. I wonder, do any of you guys have questions? Yes.
Is there, I know that there's a deadline for this kind of MTA submissions, and is there a time that you feel, okay, this is not good enough. I had a design. Okay, this is not good enough. I want to improve it. But what if the deadline is here, and you're here, and you're like, I know it's not good enough. I know it can be better. So what do you do can you tell the MTA and I need a few more days because I know the design is going to be better?
No.
so that's my first question. And the second question is, would there be a time that you go back and you be like, oh, I could have done this way better? And how do you overcome your feeling of this guilt? I know for Beatrice, the paper cutting is irreversible. So,
well, there is a million things you can or cannot do. The important thing is to do the best yet you can at the time. So to be in the moment, 200%, to work as much as you can on one thing, and to plan your deadline. I mean, I'm a pessimist. So if I need to do something in 1 month, I'm like, for me, my deadline is next week. So I'm always ahead of time when I bring back things, because I never think I can do it. And in fact, I do it.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say about that. I think that it's important to not get so tied up with whether you have perfection. keep getting your work out there, because people will contact you. If they like your work, they're going to contact you, and build your brand, build your style. Sometimes I think perfection can be so hobbling. It can make you not get work out there. So I think that's one of the things that I would recommend. And as far as going back and reworking things, sure, you can do that, but you can also just go on to the next thing.
Yeah, I'd say as far as the deadline thing, I think this is another reason why I have a list of reasons why illustrators are really good at public art thinking, because we're used to like doing stuff under such tight deadlines. I mean, it was just like, I believe that the app that I will event was like, I will deliver it yesterday with this app, you know, the way things have gone with deadlines. But that's the thing, is like, you've also done so much work that was kind of bad. And you put it out there and you didn't realize it was bad till like years later. So you're used to just like, and then people call you up like, we love this thing. You're like, oh, maybe it wasn't bad. Because that's the thing, it's like aesthetics and art is so irrational. I tell my students this and their like heads turn around. I'm like, when you get out into the world, you'll realize that nobody knows anything. And it's kind of true. I mean, I've walked into meetings, I'm like, this is what you need. And they're like, that's what we need. I'm like, they didn't need that. You know, it's really kind of wild. So like why something works or doesn't work, you know, you may criticize it, and then 7 years later, you're like, oh, that was ridiculous. So yeah, the deadlines exist. Just because you have more time doesn't mean it's going to be better. Yeah. And that's the thing to think about. Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
I wanted to know, these guys are all well established. Do you ever have like young illustrators who don't necessarily have 20 years under their belt? Like, how does someone who's just entering the field get involved in a commission? Yeah.
No, that's an excellent question. And I think our program is actually very different from a lot of public programs around the world in that we have a very broad range of artists. We have blue chip artists like Al Held and Roy Lichtenstein and Elizabeth Murray, and artists whose work you'll see in every major collection around the world. We have artists who are very well known, who are mid-career artists, and we do have a lot of artists who are just starting out, both in our permanent projects and programs, as well as in, I think, in our graphics program. We work with professional artists, though. We don't, in our program, work with student artists. It's just that's part of our mission, and that's what we do. But we always are looking at young artists who are coming up and doing interesting work. You know, for us, we want those artists to be working professionally. They do need to make their deadlines, whether they're doing public projects that are permanent, or they're doing graphics or photography or whatever they're doing. It's important to know that you can manage your time in that way. But we're always open to those kinds of things, and we encourage artists who are interested in contacting us to look at our website, and there's a Contact Us button, and you can send us a link, and we can look and we'll add it into the pool of artists that we're selecting. If artists are interested, and I mentioned this I think earlier in the tour, if artists are interested in applying for any of our permanent projects, we list calls for artists on our website, but also through social media. So follow us on Instagram or Facebook or Tumblr or Twitter. And it's hashtag MTA Arts. You can look at our site, and we always list our opportunities there. We do not have one at this very moment, but do keep your eye out and see, because things are always coming up, and you can submit your materials. And once you've submitted, your work stays in our selection pool for up to a year. And so we'll continue to look at your work and bring that into the selection pool. So we encourage everyone to. We'd like more and more artists to apply. We love to meet and learn about new artists, so it's something that's very important to us.
In fact, I can add that, so I started very late, and I'm self-taught. I don't know anybody in the art world. So I just call for artists. You Google call for artists, and you send. So I only got 8 years of rejection before my first commission. But I got them, you know, and to show my work also to museum and all that. I mean, nobody asked me for, so I just look on the website, how do you submit your work? And I follow the rules, and I send the things, and people, they love the underdog. I have to say, I've been in other juries after, and people, they're always looking for the new ideas or another thing, and it's always nice.
So I think we have room for one or maybe two more questions. So, yeah?
One interesting theme that's been repeating with all these installations, your work can be viewed as a window to the past.
Did everybody hear that question? Yeah? How the question is, if work is installed in a permanent way for up to 100 years, how can it be viewed as a kind of a window into the past for those who are looking at it in the future? I think it's actually a really interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. The first project that I got, Lester told me, this is a lie, I guess, that they build for 200 years, that they only build for 100.
Say 100.
All right. He told me 200. He really stepped up the ante there.
He's hyperbolic. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, ooh. And in that moment, that's the thing, is like I never really seriously considered the public art or fine art world and what that means to have this dialogue with people that, you don't meet, you never know, and all this stuff. And it's really humbling. I mean, I'll tell you this crazy story that I was surfing, and there was a guy in Rockaway, and his board hit a pole, and it needed a repair and everything. He gets up, and I was like, oh man, my friend's gonna come here. He's got duct tape. We'll fix your surfboard and everything. It'd be great. So we start talking and everything, and then my friend shows up with duct tape. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I live out in the Central Avenue stop, and they just opened this subway station. And he's like, and I got my kids, and like every day we're on the train and we look at this thing, and I love it. And I'm just wondering, like, who made this thing? And my friend Pablo goes, George made it, and it's so weird because like this goes back to the idea of like illustration, like there is a whole history of my career. Like I've been doing this for 25 years of art that I've done that no one will ever see. There's no archive of it. There's nothing. It's like my career didn't exist before like 1997 or something like this, or probably even like 2000. But this stuff, like as an artist, like it's a really humbling kind of experience to think that like 100 years, like yeah, okay, this hopefully will. Well, that's the other thing. You have this responsibility that you want a piece of art to be new and fresh every day. And that's the thing, is like the details, is like the way that the human mind loves to pore over details and gets lost in aesthetics, I think is a responsibility that you have too, that hopefully endures.
Yeah, I mean, you even don't know if there's still a planet in 100 years, so you cannot worry too much ahead. But you can
the
see
pessimist
also,
talking, I just want to say. The pessimist on the panel.
But you can also see the tiles of the subway or the things they were made 100 years ago, and how you see them. So you do art in a certain context, and it's always seen in another context because people don't have the history when you make it or who you were. So it's completely independent. And then it's viewed on differently. So that's how we see the art from the 18th century or 15th century. Sometimes we find it's too busy, and after it's okay. And the Baroque is in or out. But even when it's in or out, now we see it as a style and not in the context of it was made. So a lot of messages that they were made for are lost along the time. And you don't know for what it will be appreciated after. We have enough to worry with daily life, so.
So we have one more question. Yes.
I'm just curious, what was the last book that you all have read?
Oh my God! I was hoping that I could get a teaching gig or something like this. Like we were going to move to Asbury. I was like, oh, I'll just take the train in because I can finally read again. I have to say the last book that I finished, and this is the strangest book that I've ever read, and it's going to sound weird when I say it, is literally the most bizarre novel. I finally read Moby Dick. It's so weird. Holy smokes. Great. Strange.
I actually just read 2 books for my book group, which is tomorrow. And the first one was The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd, and the second one was To Kill a Mockingbird, and both deal with race, and we thought it would be an interesting discussion in light of what's been going on in the U.S. with racial relations. So highly recommend both. I'd read Mockingbird many years ago, forgot how much I loved her writing, so.
Well, I'm very French on that one because it was Welbeck, Submission, and Modiano.
So I want to thank all of you so much for being here with us and encourage you to support, of course, the Society of Illustrators, who are remarkable and put on incredible programs all the time. I don't actually think they ever sleep here. I think they're just constantly running around. They're really impressive. But thank you so much. And please follow Society of Illustrators, and please follow MTA Arts and Design on any of our social media platforms. We would love to have you. And we hereby deputize you all to keep your eyes out, tell people about what it is that we're doing. All of the art in the public, in the subway system, belongs to you, and you now know a little bit more about it, and we hope that you'll continue learning more. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.